is that they're carved out of the cliff faces of the river. We built it at such a small scale. We built 8 26-foot tall trees to sit in amongst this colossal miniature that we built, about the size of a rugby field.
Good morning, you all. I'm the painting guy, and oh man, these miniatures from the Lord of the Ring are just gorgeous. Let's take a look at them.
When I saw the final cut of Lord of the Rings at the cinema, nothing made my heart soar more from the work that we had done than the miniatures. The beauty and the awesome size and nature of the miniatures has given the film a wonderful reality and firmly makes you feel as though you've journeyed to Middle-earth.
It's really quite remarkable. And
yeah, I've seen the Amazon series lately, and it's nothing compared to those pictures. Those look so good. They got all these textures that you don't really get with CGI. This is good craft.
You got to have real film footage. You can use digital technology to blend things. Some things you have to do digitally. If you have a character like the cave troll, you got to do it digitally, of course, because there's no other way to do it. But beyond that, as much as possible, you want to really photograph an object and really stick it into the shots.
This is probably the most specifically Alan Lee-esque design on the film.
Look at this detail. I did my own diorama building. You see all these YouTubers building dioramas. But that thing, that will blow you away.
We built it at such a small scale, 24th scale, because...
We built it at such a small scale.
No matter how big they are, they're never big enough.
The basic rule of thumb is the bigger the miniature, the more realistic it's going to be, because you can put more detail into it.
Yeah, I've only just started to build some of my own dioramas. So small. So much work in there. All the leaves, the greens. And then he's talking about small scale.
Originally, this miniature was only ever intended for a big wide shot from up the other end of the valley. But what unfolded in the coming months was that Peter envisaged shots where the miniature would be much more involving to stand up and close up in the film.
Chuck Schumann, who was in charge of shooting that sequence.
This gold, this golden color. In the Amazon series, I just only watched the first episode, but they also had these golden trees and golden leaves, but it was like clean. Everything was crisp and nothing is just as warm and great as this shot.
Quince did a brilliant job of working out the details of matching the lighting of the miniature to the live action lighting, and also because in many cases the moves had to be elaborately massaged to fit, because in many cases there were several different layers of miniature stretching back in depth, and they all had to be shot at different in different positions and at different speeds.
Did they just say that they didn't just film the character and then put the miniature behind it? No, they filmed the character, put the miniature behind it, and put another miniature in the back to create these layers. Man, that's complicated.
We very much wanted Lothlorien to feel like this ethereal elven home up in the treetops of these huge malorns, that twinkling amongst the branches were these beautiful, almost dewdrop spots of light, and that the whole place felt like it was enriched with music and culture, that this was the highest level of cultural sophistication. This was the most difficult miniature that we built for the whole of Lord of the Rings. We built 8 26-foot tall trees, each one about 5 feet in diameter, carved out of polystyrene.
That's not a miniature anymore.
Huge steel structure inside them, then skinned in urethane and carefully detailed to look like bark. Each one had a huge spray of branches.
You know what this does? Mostly? It's so good for the actors to stand between trees It makes them feel like they are in a forest. It makes them act like they're in a forest. And they translate over camera. If you're in front of a green screen, you will never really be able to behave just like being in the forest.
We only had 8 trees, but we had to have it look like a whole forest. So basically we had to shoot those 8, change our positions, pull the camera back, shoot them again, change them positions again, pull the camera back again, and then essentially stack them up. So you'd have, in a sense, 8 times 3, 24 trees instead of 8, by step and repeat. This is the kind of thing that you do to try to tie things together. So once you're looking about 20 feet up, you're into the miniature, and you simply continue on up into the canopy where it disappears into the smoke. And you have the sensation that you're looking hundreds and hundreds of feet into the air.
Man, I'm speechless. Why don't people do this anymore? Because it's a lot of work. But tell me one movie that is just as great as this one. Yeah, you can shoot 2 movies, 5 movies, 10 movies. But will you be able to create this greatness?
Now with Orthanc, we wanted to capture the original painting of Alan Lee. In Alan's painting, he illustrated very much the feeling that this was a tower that had been chipped out of black obsidian. The only way we figured out to capture the look of black obsidian was by carving it out of microcrystalline wax. We carved every single element, then assembled it using hot waxes to melt all of the elements together.
No automatic
and then
textures.
We took a massive silicon mold, a huge matrix mold of this whole structure, and then eventually replicated it in encapsulating resin.
Resin cast. An entire tower.
It's designed so that you can come up to it really, really close. Now, we get into what we call hyper-detailing here. We knew, for example, that we were going to have to do a shot of just the staircase with Christopher Lee walking down it. Every step was carved with great precision, and every little edge was sharpened so that when we get into that extreme microscopic magnification...
Wait. See that? All this irregular, weathering texture? That's missing in CGI.
Swooping in towards Orthanc with Gandalf on top of the tower. That miniature lasts over a minute long on screen, which is another rule in special effects, is keep the shots short so people don't know that they're fake. Our miniatures were so big and so impressive that they stood up to a shot that was a minute long. No problem at all.
It's built at 35th scale to sit in amongst this colossal miniature that we built, about the size of a rugby field.
The Ring of Ice.
This is a tent. It's bigger than a human. This is bigger than a human.
24 mine shafts were built into the surface of the miniature. There was over 1,000 pieces of individually modelled architecture that made up the componentry of the mine workings that were laid out throughout this miniature.
They were just urethane.
Anyone who ever had to paint a whole board or a whole army knows the work that went into this. 1,000 pieces.
The crow hole shot, which is where the crows come and report to Saruman that they've found the Fellowship. Basically, we needed a hole for the crows to dive into, a first cavern for them to fly through, a second cavern for them to fly through, and another cavern which would be the background for Saruman, the live-action play to Saruman at the end. So essentially, this is one continuous shot on 5 separate pieces. And we had to do the whole thing in a week and a half. But it was a treat because it's a very exciting shot. And Peter just basically said, make it cool, make it look like an ant farm. So that's what we did.
You know how big the camera is? It's such a thing. You need to fit it through the miniature. Look at it again.
Whole shot, which is where the crows come and report to Saruman that they
camera
found
like this on the motion control system, maneuvering tightly through those miniatures. not touching anything, that's like really complicated to do. Today we got so small things. Back then,
John Howe's illustration strongly inspired the Argonauts, and he played a great part in the art direction of these characters. It's funny when you're standing amongst the miniature, because you're not at the eye height of the hobbits and the boats, it looks very miniature-like. But when it's lit beautifully by Alex Funke and his team
yeah, the
on the
lighting is
miniature
really important.
stage, and the correct environment,
That's something what is different there to what most of the miniature painters I know and their diorama builders do, because most of us build it to be lit from above, clearly lit, so you need to paint in all the light. And that advantage you got on film, so you don't need to paint it. That's a big work saver.
and digital surroundings, Tol Brandia sitting in amongst the falls, and the sky and landscape is placed in, a miniature like this can very much come to life.
Yeah, instant aging.
Weathering.
You realise this is a top secret process developed over 1 million years by cavemen and model makers alike. I'm not going to knock that front piece off because I need to think about that. I've got to knock a piece off the nose, and I hate doing that because I know that if I knock a piece off the nose, the wrong bit will fall off. I'm actually going to give the stone to Alan Lee and make him knock the piece off the nose. The trick with a scale model is not to overdo it. You've got to be subtle. You can't go whacking into things and getting too carried away.
The
You got
concept
to be subtle and use these shots sparingly. The heroes have to do something to see such greatness. And because it's so much work to build these miniatures, this happens automatically. When every shot is the most beautiful shot in the world, everything looks just kind of the same.
behind them is that they're carved out of the cliff faces of the river. But we theorise that probably there wasn't the necessary rock to be able to carve the whole figure. So in what we're saying is that they were able to carve to about this level, but then had to construct this massive quarry to mine the rock, lifting with massive gantries and lifting equipment up onto the upper surfaces of
Even
these
if you don't
huge
see it,
300
the amount of thought that went into it. Subconsciously, you feel it when you see it in the movie.
tall sculptures to place in place these huge granite blocks into which they could continue to carve and create the final look of the characters.
Here we are in the Great Hall of Moria, one of the great strongholds of the dwarves.
He's just sitting in it.
It lies between the stairs of Khazad-dûm and the bridge of Khazad-dûm. This is a very beautiful set. It's built mostly out of hard sculpted resin, finished to look like polished marble. And the floor is all built out of foam, and the ceiling's built out of foam. One of the things that's most remarkable about this set is the degree of detail that's been drawn into it. It's one of the things that makes it so convincing. As close as you go, you see more and more information. You see more and more detail. And that's what makes a good miniature work, is the fact that...
That's also important if you don't go close to it. Even if it's blurry in the background, you still feel that there is this detail. So you have to get this amount of detail.
If we've done our job really well, people won't know that they're looking at miniatures. And if you think it's real, then that's a successful model.
He wants the effect shots to disappear. I mean, in a sense, our greatest
Focus
triumph would
on
be
the
if
story.
people said, effects? What effects? We try to add the storytelling elements that don't exist in the real world, and then we should just erase our tracks.
If you want to check out the whole thing, I put the link in the description. If you want to see me painting miniatures, feel free to check out my channel. And see you guys in the next one. Woo!